Getting older changes your body, but not every change should be blamed on age. If you are over 60 and you've recently noticed something different about your weight, strength, breathing, sleep, memory, or balance, there is one important question you should ask. Is this simply aging, or is your body trying to tell you something? Have you ever noticed a small change in your body and simply told yourself, "I'm getting older, so this must be normal"? Maybe you are not walking quite as quickly as you used to. Perhaps climbing a flight of stairs leaves you more tired than before. Your clothes may have become looser, even though you were not trying to lose weight. Maybe your sleep has changed. You wake up several times during the night, or you simply do not have the same energy you had a few years ago. For many people over 60, these changes are easy to dismiss. We often hear that getting older means becoming weaker, sleeping less, moving more slowly, or forgetting things occasionally. And to be fair, aging really does change the body. Muscle mass can gradually decline. Recovery may take longer. Sleep patterns can change. Your metabolism may slow down. Some physical abilities may not be exactly what they were at 30 or 40, but there is one important distinction that can protect your health. Something can be common with age without being something you should automatically ignore. That does not mean every new symptom is dangerous. In fact, many changes have simple explanations. A person may feel tired because they are not sleeping well. Weight may change because their appetite has changed. Walking may become more difficult because they have been less active. There are many possible explanations. The important question is not, does this mean I have a serious disease? The better question is this a new, persistent, unexplained, or worsening change that deserves attention? That small difference can completely change how you look at your health. Think about it this way. Your body is constantly giving you information. Most of the time, those signals are ordinary. But occasionally, your body may be telling you that something has changed enough to deserve a closer look. And here is what makes this especially important after 60. Some of the most meaningful changes are not dramatic. They may start quietly. You may notice them once, ignore them, and then gradually get used to them. Eventually, what was once unusual begins to feel normal simply because you have experienced it for so long. That is why in this video, we are going to look at 7 body changes after 60 that you should not simply dismiss as old age. Some will be obvious. Others may surprise you. And one of them is particularly easy to overlook because it can appear so gradually that you may not even realize it is happening. But before we get into those 7 changes, there is one mistake we need to understand first. We often confuse something that is common with something that is harmless. And those two things are not always the same. One of the biggest mistakes people make after 60 is assuming that every change in the body has the same meaning. It does not. Some changes are a natural part of getting older. Others may be telling you that something deserves a closer look. The challenge is knowing the difference without becoming frightened by every ache, pain, or bad night's sleep. A simple way to think about it is this. Aging is usually gradual. A warning sign may be different in its timing, intensity, persistence, or effect on your daily life. Imagine an older car that you have owned for many years. You expect the tires to wear down eventually. You may need to replace a belt, change the oil more often, or make small repairs. That is normal wear. But imagine that one morning, a completely new warning light suddenly appears on the dashboard. You would not put tape over it and say, "Well, the car is old." You would want to know why the light came on. Your body deserves the same kind of attention. For example, becoming slightly less flexible over many years may not be surprising, but if you suddenly find yourself struggling to get out of a chair, that is a different kind of change. Sleeping a little differently as you age can happen, but if you suddenly begin waking repeatedly every night and feel exhausted throughout the day, it may be worth understanding why. Taking a little longer to walk may happen gradually, but a noticeable decline in balance or a sudden change in coordination deserves more attention. There are 4 questions you can ask whenever something about your body feels different. Is this new? Is it persistent? Is it getting worse? And is it interfering with something I normally do? You do not need to answer these questions perfectly. They are simply a way to notice patterns. A symptom that happens once and disappears may have a very different meaning from something that continues for weeks. A mild change that does not affect your daily life may be less concerning than a change that prevents you from climbing stairs, preparing meals, sleeping properly, walking safely, or performing tasks you previously handled without difficulty. And there is another important point. You do not have to figure out the diagnosis yourself. If you notice an unexplained or persistent change, your job is not to search the internet and decide which disease you have. Your job is to notice the change, keep track of it, and discuss it with an appropriate healthcare professional. That approach gives you something much more valuable than fear: information. Because once you understand that not every change is dangerous, but not every change should be ignored either, you can start looking at your health with a clearer perspective. And now we can begin with the first of the 7 changes. It is one that many people actually feel good about at first until they realize the weight loss was never intentional in the first place. So let's talk about unexplained weight loss. Imagine you are getting dressed one morning and notice that your clothes feel different. Your belt needs another notch. Your shirt seems looser around the waist. Maybe someone in your family even says, "You look like you've lost some weight." At first, you may think that is a good thing. After all, we hear constantly that losing weight is healthy. But there is an important question that often gets overlooked. Did you actually intend to lose that weight? There is a big difference between intentional weight loss and unexplained weight loss. If you have changed your diet, reduced portions, become more physically active, or are following a weight management plan recommended for you, then losing weight may be expected. But if the scale is gradually moving downward, even though you have not changed what you eat or how active you are, that is something worth paying attention to, especially if it continues. And this does not automatically mean something serious is wrong. There are many possible reasons an older adult may lose weight without intending to. Perhaps their appetite has become smaller. Food may no longer taste as appealing. Dental problems may make chewing uncomfortable. Difficulty swallowing can make eating more difficult. Certain medications can affect appetite or digestion. Stress, changes in mood, digestive problems, infections, or other health conditions can also influence body weight. This is why the goal is not to look at unexplained weight loss and immediately assume the worst. The goal is to ask, why is this happening? Think of your body as a house that requires a steady supply of fuel to keep everything running. Your heart, brain, muscles, organs, and immune system all require energy and nutrients. If you consistently take in less than your body needs, your body has to draw on stored energy. Over time, that can affect not only body fat, but also muscle. And that last part becomes especially important after 60. A person can sometimes look at the scale and think, I only lost a little weight. But if some of that change involves muscle, the consequences may show up somewhere else, in the ability to stand from a chair, carry groceries, climb stairs, or maintain balance. That brings us to an important myth. Myth: losing weight is always a good thing after 60. Not necessarily. Healthy, intentional weight management is very different from unexplained weight loss. What matters is the reason behind the change. So if you notice that your weight is steadily decreasing without trying, especially if you also have reduced appetite, unusual fatigue, digestive changes, difficulty swallowing, or other new symptoms, do not simply assume it is because you are getting older. Keep track of the change and discuss it with a qualified healthcare professional. And remember, one measurement does not tell the whole story. Trends are often more informative than a single number. But here is where the story becomes even more interesting. The number on the scale is only part of the picture. Sometimes the more important clue is not how much you weigh, but what your body can still do. Because you can lose strength even when the scale does not look particularly alarming. And that brings us to the next change. Unusual weakness or loss of strength. Think about something you probably do every single day without giving it much thought. Getting up from a chair. For most people, standing up, walking across the room, carrying a bag of groceries, opening a jar, or climbing a few stairs feels like an ordinary part of life. But what happens when those simple tasks suddenly start requiring much more effort? Maybe you have started pushing yourself up from the arms of the chair. Perhaps you need to stop halfway up the stairs. Maybe the grocery bags that once felt easy now seem surprisingly heavy. Or perhaps you notice that you cannot walk the same distance you used to without feeling weak or needing a break. Many people immediately say, I'm getting older. And yes, aging can affect muscle strength. As we get older, muscle mass and physical performance can gradually decline. Recovery may also take longer than it did when we were younger, but there is an important difference between a gradual change and a noticeable decline that is happening faster than you would expect. If you were slightly less strong than you were 10 years ago, that may not be surprising. But if you have noticed a meaningful change over a much shorter period, especially if it continues or interferes with everyday activities, it deserves attention. One useful way to understand this is to think of your muscles like a savings account. Every time you move your body, challenge your muscles appropriately, and give yourself adequate nutrition, you are making deposits. When you spend long periods sitting, remain inactive, or do not get enough nutrients, you may gradually make fewer deposits. Over time, the balance can fall. And unlike money, muscle strength is not just about appearance. It helps you stand, walk, climb stairs, maintain balance, protect your independence, and recover from physical challenges. Nutrition matters too. Your body needs enough overall energy and nutrients to maintain muscle. Protein-containing foods can be an important part of a balanced diet, although individual nutritional needs can vary, especially for people with certain medical conditions. Physical activity matters just as much. Appropriate strength exercises, walking, balance activities, and regular movement can help support physical function. The key word is appropriate. Someone with joint problems, recent surgery, significant weakness, or another medical condition may need individualized guidance before beginning a new exercise routine. There are also other possible reasons for unusual weakness. Certain illnesses, medication effects, poor nutrition, sleep problems, or other health changes can contribute. That is why unexplained weakness should not be treated as a diagnosis by itself. And there is one situation that deserves particular attention: sudden weakness. If weakness develops suddenly, especially if it affects one side of the body or occurs with trouble speaking, facial drooping, severe dizziness, confusion, or other sudden neurological symptoms, it may require urgent medical attention. For everyday weakness, however, the message is much simpler. Pay attention to changes in what your body can do. Ask yourself, can I still rise from a chair as easily? Can I carry what I normally carry? Can I walk the distance I normally walk? Has something changed noticeably? These simple observations can tell you more than simply looking at a number on the scale. And there is another reason strength matters. It is closely connected to balance and mobility. When strength decreases, everyday movement can become more difficult, and that can affect independence. But now we are moving from what your muscles can do to something even more fundamental, because your body is constantly working to deliver oxygen where it is needed. And sometimes the first sign that something has changed is not pain at all. It is the feeling that you simply cannot catch your breath like you used to. And that brings us to the next body change: new or persistent breathlessness. Imagine that you are walking up the same stairs you have used for years. Nothing about the stairs has changed. You are not carrying anything unusually heavy, and you are not running, but halfway up, you suddenly need to stop. You are breathing harder than you remember. You wait for a few seconds, take a deeper breath, and eventually continue. The next day, it happens again. At first, you may think, I'm just getting older. Maybe your fitness is not what it used to be. Maybe you have been sitting more recently. Maybe you did not sleep well the night before. And sometimes, those explanations really are the reason. But there is an important difference between becoming temporarily breathless after strenuous activity and developing new or persistent breathlessness during activities that previously felt normal. If you can no longer walk your usual distance without stopping, if climbing a normal flight of stairs suddenly feels much harder, or if you become short of breath doing ordinary activities around the house, that change deserves attention, especially if it is new, persistent, or gradually getting worse. Why? Because breathing is not controlled by your lungs alone. Think of your body as a delivery network. Your lungs are like the loading station. They bring oxygen into your body. Your heart is the pump that moves blood around. Your blood vessels are the roads that carry that blood throughout the body. And your muscles and organs are the destinations that need that oxygen. When everything is working efficiently, you may barely notice the process. You breathe, your heart beats, and your body gets what it needs. But if one part of that system is struggling, your body may have to work harder to keep up. That can sometimes feel like breathlessness. There are many possible reasons. Reduced physical fitness can make ordinary activity feel harder. Lung conditions can affect breathing. Heart-related problems can affect circulation. Anemia can reduce the blood's ability to carry oxygen. Certain medications and other health conditions can also contribute. The important point is that breathlessness is a symptom, not a diagnosis. You should not see this video, recognize yourself in the description, and immediately decide what disease you have. Instead, ask a simpler question. Is this different from what is normal for me? That question matters. If you have always become short of breath after running up several flights of stairs, that may not represent a new change. But if you suddenly become breathless, walking across your home, carrying groceries, or doing another routine activity that never used to cause a problem, it is worth discussing with a healthcare professional. And there are situations where you should not wait. Severe or sudden difficulty breathing, especially when accompanied by chest pressure or pain, fainting, blue or gray lips, severe weakness, confusion, or rapidly worsening symptoms can require urgent medical attention. The goal is not to make you afraid every time you take a deeper breath. The goal is to recognize when your normal pattern has changed. Because your body often gives you clues long before you have an explanation for them. And sometimes, unlike breathlessness, the next warning sign does not feel dramatic at all. It can simply appear as a little extra swelling around your ankles at the end of the day. You may notice it, ignore it, and then see it again tomorrow. And because it can become so familiar, many people eventually stop mentioning it. That brings us to the next change: persistent or unusual swelling. Have you ever looked down at your ankles at the end of the day and noticed that they seem a little larger than they did that morning? Maybe your socks have left deeper marks around your legs. Your shoes feel tighter. You press your finger against the skin and notice a temporary indentation. It can be easy to think, "I was standing all day," or "this is just what happens when you get older." And sometimes, there really is a simple explanation. Sitting or standing for long periods can contribute to swelling. Heat, activity, and certain medications can also play a role. But when swelling is new, persistent, significant, or unexplained, it is worth paying attention rather than automatically accepting it as a normal part of aging. To understand why, think of your body like a house with a sophisticated plumbing and drainage system. Blood vessels constantly move fluid around your body, while other systems help return excess fluid back into circulation. Normally, this process remains balanced, but when that balance changes, fluid can begin collecting in tissues, often around the feet, ankles, or lower legs. There are many possible reasons this can happen. Sometimes it is related to prolonged sitting or standing. Certain medications can cause or contribute to swelling. In other situations, circulation, heart function, kidney function, liver problems, or other health conditions may play a role. That does not mean that swollen ankles automatically indicate a serious disease. This distinction is important. Myth: swollen ankles are just something everyone gets after 60. Fact: swelling can be common, but new or persistent swelling should not automatically be dismissed. Instead of immediately worrying about the worst possibility, start by noticing the pattern. Is the swelling present every day? Is it becoming more noticeable? Does it affect one leg or both? Did it begin after starting or changing a medication? Does it improve after resting? Have you noticed other changes at the same time? These observations can give a healthcare professional useful information. There is one pattern that deserves particular attention: sudden swelling in one leg, especially when accompanied by pain, warmth, or tenderness. That should be evaluated promptly. And if significant swelling or breathing difficulty develops suddenly, particularly with severe symptoms, seek urgent medical attention. Again, the goal is not to panic when you see a little swelling after a long day. The goal is to recognize when your body's normal pattern has changed. Because sometimes the body gives you its next clue when you are not walking, exercising, or even awake. What if the next change happens while you are asleep, and you only notice it when you wake up? You may find yourself waking repeatedly, feeling exhausted despite spending hours in bed, or noticing that your sleep has changed dramatically. Many people simply say, "I'm getting older." But sometimes there is more to the story. And that brings us to the next change: major changes in your sleep or nighttime patterns. Have you started waking up during the night more often than you used to? Maybe you fall asleep normally, but 2 or 3 hours later, you are suddenly awake. You look at the clock, try to fall back asleep, and eventually drift off, only to wake again. Or perhaps you are spending what seems like enough time in bed, but when morning arrives, you still feel exhausted. You may tell yourself, this is just part of getting older, and there is some truth to that. Sleep does naturally change with age. Older adults may experience lighter sleep, changes in sleep timing, or a tendency to wake more easily during the night. But there is a difference between a normal change in sleep and a major, persistent change that begins affecting your daytime life. If you repeatedly wake throughout the night, suddenly begin snoring much more than before, wake up gasping or choking, feel unusually sleepy during the day, or notice a significant decline in sleep quality, it may be worth finding out why. There are many possible explanations. Pain can make it difficult to stay asleep. Stress and anxiety can affect sleep. Some medications can alter sleep patterns. Urinary symptoms can repeatedly wake you during the night. Breathing-related sleep problems can interfere with restorative sleep. Changes in routine, caffeine use, alcohol, or the sleep environment can also contribute. This is why the goal is not to assume there is one specific cause. Instead, think of sleep as a daily recovery period for your body and brain. When sleep quality is consistently poor, you may notice the effects during the day. You might feel less alert, have difficulty concentrating, become more irritable, or find yourself struggling with tasks that normally feel easy. For an older adult, excessive daytime sleepiness can also become a safety issue. It may affect driving, reaction time, balance, and the ability to stay focused. The good news is that there are several simple habits worth trying. Keep your sleep and wake times reasonably consistent. Avoid excessive caffeine later in the day. Make your bedroom comfortable, quiet, and dark. Give yourself a predictable wind-down routine before bed. And if you suspect a medication is affecting your sleep, do not stop it on your own. Talk with the healthcare professional who prescribed it. Sometimes a medication, dose, or timing may need to be reviewed. It can also help to keep a simple sleep record for several days. Write down when you went to bed, when you woke up, how many times you remember waking, and how you felt the following day. That information can be surprisingly useful during a medical appointment. But there is another reason sleep deserves attention. Sometimes people notice that their memory seems worse and immediately become frightened by the possibility of a serious cognitive problem. Yet poor sleep itself can make concentration and memory feel different. And that brings us to a change that frightens people more than almost any other: new or worsening memory problems and confusion. The important thing is that not every memory lapse means the same thing, and understanding that difference can prevent unnecessary fear. There are few things more unsettling than noticing that your memory does not seem to be working quite the way it used to. Maybe you walk into a room and suddenly forget why you went there. You cannot remember someone's name for a few seconds. You put your keys somewhere and have to search for them. These things can happen to almost anyone. Even younger adults forget names, lose their keys, miss an appointment, or struggle to remember something they knew just a few minutes earlier. So, when does ordinary forgetfulness become something worth discussing? The answer is not simply your age. A useful way to think about it is to ask whether the change is occasional or becoming a pattern that interferes with everyday life. Imagine that you occasionally misplace your keys. You search for them, find them, and immediately remember what you were doing. That is very different from repeatedly forgetting what the keys are for, becoming confused about familiar routines, getting lost in a place you have known for years, repeatedly asking the same question, or struggling with tasks that were once completely familiar. The difference is not one forgotten name or one missed appointment. It is the pattern, progression, and impact on daily life. And this is where an important myth needs to be addressed. Myth: every memory problem after 60 means dementia. That is not true. Memory and concentration can be affected by many different factors. Poor sleep can make it harder to concentrate. Stress can affect attention. Some medications can influence alertness or memory. Illness, nutritional problems, mood changes, and other health conditions can also affect cognitive function. This is exactly why a noticeable change should not simply be ignored. If there is a possible cause that can be addressed, finding it sooner may be helpful. That does not mean you should panic every time you forget a name. Instead, pay attention to changes that are persistent, worsening, or beginning to interfere with normal independence. Are you having trouble managing things you used to handle easily? Are appointments becoming difficult to remember? Are familiar tasks suddenly confusing? Are family members repeatedly noticing changes that you have not noticed yourself? These observations can be useful information to share with a healthcare professional. And if a spouse, adult child, or close friend brings up a concern, the conversation should be approached with respect rather than embarrassment or blame. Instead of saying, "You're forgetting everything," a more helpful approach might be, "I've noticed you've seemed more confused about this lately. Maybe we should talk to someone about it." The goal is support, not judgment. There is also an important distinction between gradual memory changes and sudden confusion. If someone suddenly becomes confused, disoriented, unusually difficult to wake, or dramatically different from their normal mental state, that is not something to simply assume is normal aging. Sudden confusion can have many possible causes and may require urgent medical evaluation, particularly when it develops alongside other sudden symptoms. So remember this, not every cognitive change means a permanent condition, and that is exactly why ignoring the change can be a mistake. You do not need to diagnose yourself. You simply need to notice the pattern. Write down when you first noticed the change. Pay attention to whether it is becoming more frequent. Note any major changes in sleep, medications, health, or routine that happened around the same time. That information can help a healthcare professional understand what is happening. And now we come to the final body change in our list. It is one that can quietly affect independence long before a person realizes how much their body has changed. It may begin with holding on to furniture, avoiding stairs, taking smaller steps, or feeling slightly less steady when turning.